And it was like, okay, right, we're probably preparing for extra time now. And then obviously Jared goes in and scores. And you just sort of half lost my mind at that point. And it is obviously very tactical now. It is, like a game of chess, I suppose. So I think probably more research does need to be done on how an individual influences that shape or formation or the way they play. You had sort of one, like what we call as a dashboard now, and it opened up like 328 other Excel workbooks, and that would populate the statistical report. Pellegrini obviously was great to work with himself and his coaching staff. Obviously, things he'd done at Man City, and then the part of his coaching staff was Enzo Maresca. I'd always use data to back up video, and they'd work side by side together. I wouldn't ever just lead with data. Big Sam was a big advocate for analysis, and he gave us a lot of responsibility, but there was a lot of pressure alongside that. He is a massive pioneer for analysis, and I always say thank him for the trust he put in myself and the department.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast, and today's guest is Jamie Osman. So Jamie is very experienced when it comes to working as an analyst within professional football, and more specifically in the Premier League. So most recently he was with Ipswich Town last season, but before that he spent 13 years at West Ham United. So the West Ham role started out as an academy position, but that changed very quickly and he was up to the first team before he knew it, and also ended up heading up the whole analysis department. So in this conversation we speak about some of the different managers and coaches that Jamie's worked with, different experiences, what it's actually like working as an analyst within the Premier League. We speak about some of the good times, from the bad times, and that does include winning the Conference League with West Ham United as well. So before we get into the conversation, a quick reminder, this video is brought to you by InPlay Online. So that is a cloud-based video analysis solution. More on those guys later. And I want to quickly ask you also to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. And if you do find value from this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. So without further ado, let's bring Jamie into the conversation. Jamie, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's a lovely day today, and as we were just saying there just before we start recording, it's fixture release day, which is when we're recording this. So as a Sunderland fan, which many people know of, I thought it was quite weird that we drew West Ham first game, obviously with your ties to West Ham. So and we will get into obviously the fact that you've stepped away from the club setting, but I suppose the first time in a long time, which you're not that bothered about the fixture release day. Has it been a bit different for you, Jim?
It's obviously it's been going around Twitter and stuff anyway. You get the usual sort of leaks of who's playing who. It's never ever right, but and my first one is usually first game of the season, Christmas time, because you want to see obviously if you're going to be close to your family or not. Last day of the season as well, and then for me, when Southampton were in the Premier League, all my family are from Southampton. That's where I'm originally from, so I'd always look at that fixture as well. It's a strange. I've not really thought about it too much today. Always looking out for West Ham and Ipswich, obviously. Two teams are close to my heart. But for me, it's a different scenario now.
Definitely. So, I mean, obviously, I know who you are. Many people watching might know or who you are already or heard of you. But what I'll do is I'll pass it over to you, Jamie, just to give a bit of an intro to yourself, who you are, what you've been up to, and what's your involvement been in sports analysis.
Yeah, no problem. Jamie Osman. I've been in performance analysis for the last 15 to 17 years now. Sounding quite old there. So probably a bit like many other analysts in the game, started out with a placement year. So I was at a university down in Bournemouth, sports psychology and coaching science degree. Wasn't really sure exactly where I wanted to head to, probably more down the coaching route. Had a module in year 2 with analysis with Bournemouth, where we had to go and collect the DVD from the game, and then we'd have to code it ourselves through Prozone. So this is a long time ago. So that was my first sort of into it, and I did enjoy it. I thought, okay, I don't really know an awful lot about this, but I'm interested. And then I was fortunate enough to have a placement year at Portsmouth Football Club. So that was the time when Michael Edwards was head of analysis. David Woodfine was the sort of assistant, and then Garvin Stewart, who was part of the first team as well. So I came in, doing a little bit of analysis with the 16s, but mainly looking to step into the coaching side. And I was fortunate enough, I suppose, that Michael Edwards left with Harry Redknapp to go to Tottenham. Everyone stepped up, and there was a bit more of an open opportunity for me to work more on the analysis side with the 18s and reserves as it was then. which I thought, okay, I gained a real good interest in this. I was developing good relationships and learning quite quickly. I was exposed to quite a lot. It was back then when the academy and the first team managers were all together, so I was in the first team environment, which was great to learn from Woody and Garv and Michael Edwards. So I was very fortunate in that and falling into the right people. And yeah, so I ended up the last 6 months of my placement year sticking with just doing analysis. So I didn't do any of I was doing any coaching anyway, but I wasn't really heavily involved on the grass at all. It was more, looking at opposition, post-match, individual unit stuff, as well as obviously having a good insight into how the first team works as well. Recording home matches at Fratton Park as well. So yeah, a great start to a career, a great insight, and very fortunate to be in that position. I then went back to uni in the final year, but carried on at Portsmouth. So I was doing sort of Monday to Wednesday at university, and then Thursday to Sunday.
Was Portsmouth unpaid at that time then, Jamie? Was that like an internship kind of thing? Or?
So yeah, it was a placement year. So I was paid for the placement year, and then I was very fortunate to be paid on the placement year, which not a lot of them are. But it meant that I could, get a little bit of money saved or whatever. There was a lot of driving between Southampton, Bournemouth, and Portsmouth. And then so then I worked part-time with the Academy of Reserves for sort of 4 days, dissertation and finishing up my degree in the final year for 3 to 4 days. So it was a tough year. But at the end of it, there was an opportunity for me to basically stay at Portsmouth, or David Woodfine had moved to West Ham with Avram Grant. And there was a role in the Academy at West Ham. So I reached out and said I'd be interested, and I was fortunate enough to get the role in the academy at West Ham again, 18s and reserves, working for West Ham. So, but from a very young age, I said I'd never ever move to London. Too busy for me. Don't want anything to do with it. Like, just want to stay in Southampton, my little bubble. And yeah, at the age of 21, I'd moved up towards like London, Essex, and got the opportunity to work at West Ham. So very fortunate in terms of the people I met early in my career. And people obviously had moved on. So Eddie had moved on to Tottenham, and which opened up a gap for me to progress. But yeah, a great chance to try and the advice I give is just trying to take everything from everyone, not in terms of, everyone's busy and so you're just trying to take as much insight as you can, listening all the time, and not saying too much too quickly. For me, at that stage in my career, I needed to listen, to learn, to understand, because I look back on now at 18, 19, 20 years old, and I'm very, very different to what I was then, and you're still quite immature, I suppose, at that age, and you're constantly trying to learn and understand how the environment works, because it is a very, very unique environment.
Yeah, definitely. There's like a difference and a similarity to mine. Like you mentioned the placements in the second year. Like I kind of did something similar where I did a placement at Sheffield United at the time, and I just kind of stayed there through the third year at uni while I was doing my dis. So that's kind of the same. But I think where we differ, you've kind of mentioned you went to uni not really knowing about analysis, or not really wanting to become, but that's where I was different. I went there for this, I wanted to work in analysis, and I picked the course for that. So yeah, strange, but like I say, kind of different paths lead to the same thing. So you've done the placement and the stuff at Portsmouth, West Ham, which we're going to get into a hell of a lot more, because there was kind of 13 years at West Ham, so there's different roles throughout that. So we're going to get into in terms of how you've progressed through those roles and that, and then more recently Ipswich Town in the Premier League campaign recently as well. You've got loads of experience, and that's why I wanted to get you on, Jamie. Really, so you got kind of 15 years at least in football at the top level in analysis. So I think there's many people will be keen to hear from you, really. So what we'll do is we'll go in terms of you started at West Ham at the academy, because from looking at your LinkedIn profile, it seems like the first role you had at West Ham, it progressed to the next one quite quick in terms of going from that 18s to maybe the first team. Yeah,
so Mark Curtis, who is at Arsenal now, he's sort of assistant head of recruitment, I believe, at Arsenal. So he was in the first team alongside Woody at West Ham, and left within sort of 6 weeks of me joining. I hope it was nothing to do with me, but I think he just wanted to go and maybe explore a little bit, travel a little bit more, and see what else is out there. And I said to Woody, I want to be considered for his role. I was 21, probably, well, not experienced enough by any means to be in the first team in the championship at the time. Um, and he had an open, honest conversation with me and said, "Look, if Big Sam doesn't like you, who was the manager at the time, there's no job left for you in the academy because I've got to recruit."
Yeah.
And I said, "Look, I completely understand, but I felt like I was confident enough to take things forward, and felt again I could learn quite a lot off himself as well as the coaching staff and the manager." So yeah, I took the role as a sort of post-match analyst in the first team after sort of 6 weeks of moving up, and I ended up really building good relationships with Big Sam, Neil McDonald, Wally Downs at the time, Ian Hendon as well, and we had goalkeeping coach Martin Margetson, who had recently been with England for a number of years as well. So again, I was fortunate enough that I'm probably going to say it quite a lot, but I was fortunate enough to learn off really, really good people that were willing to help me as well. So yeah, Big Sam was a big advocate for analysis, and he gave us a lot of responsibility, but there was a lot of pressure alongside that as well, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed the responsibility and knowing that I needed to know my stuff because any question could get asked during the meeting at any point. Big Sam was big on stats and would ask quite often, about stats during presentations, either to the players or to myself, and I had to know the answers. So again, it was a great learning environment for me to be involved in that situation where I needed to study and make sure I knew all the statistics from a post-match perspective, as well as all the video that was going to come up. So quite fortunate to be in that role quite early. Got to go on some great trips, bonding with Big Sam and the team, and ended up gaining friends for life really. And we had a really, really great environment. The staff was probably quite young there. We sort of had heads of department that were experienced, and then probably underneath them was a little bit young, but so Big Sam gave everybody trust. And again, one of the things he said to me, which was always stuck with me, was that don't just be sat in your room the whole time. And then as an analyst, I think you sometimes get lost in that, where you're just trying to. I can't believe my desk because I need to do more. And he advocated that. But it was like, go and build relationships with the sports scientists, the masseurs, the physios, and by doing that, he created a backroom staff that were willing to work hard for each other, as well as the team and Big Sam. So I've got a lot of love, and I owe a lot to Big Sam for giving me the opportunity and for trusting in me in that role at that time. And I say very, very fortunate to be in that.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing you've said it a few times, which in terms of you've been very fortunate, and a number of analysts that I've spoken to do say the same. I think some people do kind of underestimate, and this is not to take any away from your quality, Jamie, but there's a lot of luck involved, but also it does come down to the relationships you're building. You're making these relationships which then go to different roles, but there's a lot of things and moving parts in football, especially where opportunities open at the right time, and if you are there and you can take, I mean, a few things from what you said there, like in terms of you'd only been in the academy role for a few months really, and the fact that you put yourself forward for the first team, knowing that you probably weren't, well, you said yourself you weren't experienced, but you were keen to kind of take that on, but also it came with that gamble of, like you said, if you went to there and you didn't fit in or Big Sam weren't that bothered, you couldn't just go back to the academy because that role would have been filled, so you'd have been in a bit of a situation there where you might have not had a job at that point. So yeah, kind of that's really interesting to hear. So so in terms of that role then, so that was first team post-match analyst. So were you going to, what were you doing? Like what did that involve? Were you at the games? Were you filming at that point?
Yeah.
Or was most of your stuff obviously after the game? Like talk us through that.
Yes, well, I mean, I'm going back this far away that there was no film, it wasn't allowed to film. So it was like taking a feed out the back of the screen in the interview room. So that was it was no MacBook, so HP laptops, something called a Win TV box back in the day where you had to connect all that. So it was a long time ago. So I'd only take the broadcast feed at that time, before obviously we moved into filming ourselves and tactical angle and wide angle. My job would be to sort of code as well as I could, obviously given the live feed that was coming in. And then we'd try and feed back as much as we can during at half time. And say at home we had a big screen and stuff at Upton Park, which is great. So we feed back on the radio. I'd be linked to the assistant manager. And for the first year it was Big Sam was on the radio as well. And then we just discuss things during the game, similar to what it is now. And that was probably 15, 16 years ago. So yeah, I feed stuff back that I'm seeing, that they're seeing, and then we'd have stuff ready for half time to show the team. That was more used at home because we had a big screen and stuff, whereas away from home we didn't have that. Didn't have the luxury of having that. Obviously now you in the Premier League, you one of the requirements is you have to have a sort of 32-inch HDMI cable down from the screen so that you can connect up. So yeah, the analysis has changed from back in that day.
Yeah.
So then I sort of feedback what I'm seeing at half time, and then after the game again with feedback, and then again how different it was. That would then get sent to Amisco, who were Prozone and Misco sort of rivals at the time, before being sort of bought out. And then they'd code it, and then it would come back on the Sunday, and I'd have to error check it. So I'd go through every single code during from the game to make sure it was the right player, so was it a touch, a pass, a cross, a shot, and then from that you'd have that would then get sent back to them. They correct the errors. That would take probably about 5 to 6 hours probably to error check it, and then I'd get that back, and then I'd basically run it through Excel, which you had sort of one like what we call as dashboard now, and it opened up like 328 other Excel workbooks, and that would populate the statistical report. So you had your normal issues like if it went to extra time, for example, you didn't have the right template, or so many issues that would arise from it, which now you think about it's all automated and you can get statistics from loads of platforms online. But back then it wasn't the case. So there was a lot of manual labor as part of that. But I thought it gave me a good understanding and a good sort of work ethic that, I didn't have a chance to even watch the game back until I'd done the stats and make sure that's all done. Then my next step is then what probably most people are doing straight after the game now, which is watching the game back and analysing and, what did we do pre-match? How did it work? Did it work? Did it not? What was changing? So my Sunday was very different to probably what most analysts are now. But I felt like it gave me a good learning and a good understanding of what needs to be done to work hard to be able to, move forward. And I think I was always one to try and my dad would always say go the extra mile to try and succeed. And I felt like I needed to do that maybe because I was young and in that role. From the post-match side, that was that. And then I'd feed back to the manager and coaching staff sort of on a Monday from the game. And that could vary depending on if you had a 3-game week. Obviously, post-match is always variant depending on time schedule, right? So we usually do it on a Monday, and then feedback to the players, sort of what we've seen and areas to improve. And that was quite a religious thing we try and do on a week-to-week basis. But I'm sure you've heard the stories of Big Sam when it didn't go very well, and we'd be watching the game back the next day, full 90 minutes. That was very. We also had those instances as well. So it was a good role, great role for me to go into in the first team. A lot of responsibility again, which gave me the chance to improve and develop a good relationship with the coaching staff and the manager, sort of on my own, without the need for sort of Woody would always oversee and make sure my work was good and correct, but he'd allow me to go and build relationships. And from that, I've then managed in a very similar sense to him as I've moved into being a head of analysis. I felt that I developed in by me not being sort of micromanaging, because I wasn't micromanaged, I felt like that helped me develop. So then I've always wanted to do that as a manager myself.
Okay, so I hope you're enjoying the video so far, but I have a really quick interruption for anybody with an interest in video analysis. So if that's you, please do click the link down below the video for In Play Online. So just to give a quick overview, because I think it'll be relevant to a lot of people that are watching this particular video. So In Play Online is a cloud-based video analysis software. So it allows you to tag your videos, and when you've done your tagging, that includes adding labels, adding comments, adding notes and voice notes even, and you can even illustrate and draw over your clip. So if you are an aspiring analyst looking for your job and you want to create a portfolio of work, if you're a scout looking to make your kind of reports a little bit better and more animated, if you're a coach looking to get into analysis a little bit more, then this tool will be great for you because it starts at just £15 a month. So once you've done your analysis, you can add all the clips to different playlists, which can be downloaded and exported offline. You can put them into presentations and also share them to different people within your team. So it comes with a whole bunch of other features, but I'll let you click the link down below if you are interested, as I say, packages start at just £15 a month, so it's a very affordable solution if you are looking for something to help with your video analysis. So that's it for the interruption. Let's get back to the video. So just a little bit more on, you mentioned kind of Big Sam. I mean, when you went into that first team environment, Jamie, obviously you were young, you were naive at that time.
Yeah.
Big Sam seemed to many as kind of almost like a pioneer within sports analysis from like the Bolton days and even before that. So did that even cross your mind at that time, or was it just another manager where you just happy? Like, did you know of that kind of relevance of Big Sam?
So yeah, obviously I've grown up with football. That's all I've known. So I think for me, I'd been at Portsmouth for only a couple of years, but I'd got the job under Tony Adams, and then it moved to Harry Redknapp, to Avram Grant, to Steve Cottrell, so to Paul Hart. Paul Cook. So I'd had a lot of managers and it changed, and it didn't influence me directly because it was obviously the first team. But so then when my focus moving to West Ham was my role and how I was going to adapt with the academy side. I wasn't thinking too much about the first team at that time. I thought it was going to be a long time away. So when I saw that he was announced as manager, I was more excited. I was going to get a chance to see it from a distance and be able to, learn off Mark and learn off Woody to see how it works. And I think I got the 6 weeks of that, and that probably gave me the bug to, okay, I really want to be part of this. So when the opportunity did come up, I was like, not now or never, but the opportunity to work with Big Sam and his staff, after being in the environment only 6 weeks, was just an opportunity that I felt like at 21, I wanted to be heavily involved in. I think I'd kick myself if I didn't push myself to go in for it. But don't get me wrong, like you look at some of the people that he worked with at Bolton and what they've gone on to do since then. It's been great, and he is a massive pioneer for analysis, and I always say thank him for the trust he put in myself and the department, and helped me develop from an analytical side, but also as a person as well. So I think I probably got more from him as a person and how I developed as a person than I did as an analyst, but I felt I developed and come out of my shell more and more, being with him and being with his coaching and stuff. And I wouldn't be the same person now, or probably wouldn't have the experience I've had if it wasn't for the opportunities that I was given or the relationships that I built at that time.
Yeah. I suppose that would give you a lot of confidence as well as a young analyst, being almost accepted by that coaching staff, experience in analysis, kind of they trust you, you're working closely with them. So for you, that's going to do you the world of good in terms of your confidence on your own kind of knowledge as well. So really interesting. So in terms of, because I want to kind of ask you how your role changed as you kind of got a little bit more senior in terms of heading up the department, Jamie. So were you finding that you were, as you kind of got through the years at West Ham, were you doing less analysis, more overseeing things? Like how did your role kind of adapt over the time?
Yeah. So I moved into opposition probably 3 to 4 years later. Moved into the opposition side, and then David Woodfine moved to Liverpool. So again, there was an opening, and again, I said to Willie, I said I would like the opportunity to be head of analysis. Not sure if you think I'm right for the role or not, but I feel like I'd give it give my all, and I'd learn and develop, and again, he spoke to Big Sam, and I'm very fortunate to get the opportunity to do that. But as much as I say we're fortunate to do it, I know I've got to prove myself in those roles to be able to stick in that role. And I look back now at 25, I was the head of analysis in a Premier League club. Looking back, probably wasn't ready, but ultimately you've got to learn on your feet. You've got to adapt and overcome the obstacles in your way. And I learned so much in terms of from Woody directly as a manager, but also I then had to learn about budgeting, about reviews and one-to-ones and managing people, which I hadn't had to do. And I found it really difficult to be able to adapt from a team where I was similar age to the other analysts at the time. And, at the end of the season, sometimes we go away together. A few of us traveled to America, San Francisco, LA and Vegas. And then I had to move from being sort of their similar level and their friend to I'm still the exact same person, but I now need to be in charge. and I found that difficult in terms of it wasn't the lack of respect as such. It was obviously we've spoken in a certain way to each other for so many years, and then to be able to, okay, you need to change that now, and I need to change the way I am, but I don't want to change the way I am. It took a little while. I'm not going to lie and say it was an overnight thing. It probably took 18 months to 2 years for me to start moving into a bit more of a managerial perspective. But as part of that role, I was always still doing the opposition. Right. So it gave me a good sort of combination of roles where I was still able to be heavily involved in the football side, and we'd have discussions on the opposition, and we had to get everybody involved. So for me, and how I've always worked is, okay, I am the opposition analyst. I'm looking at the opposition, but I want everyone's opinion in this room right now. And we'd always collaboratively look at things like, what are you thinking? What do you think here? This is what I'm thinking, and I'd always try and present to the analyst first before I'd go to the coaches or to the manager. I always felt like you end up getting a really good understanding of, because I always found that as an analyst, when you're looking at games and you're trying to cut down your clips and go through it in your head, it's one thing. But when you actually say it out loud and you present and you speak to other people, you go, that doesn't need to be in there. I already said that doesn't need to be in there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you end up bouncing ideas off other people. And I mean, I've been very fortunate to work in the Premier League and in Europe as well. But for Championship and League One and League Two, that I've got 3 games in a week, and it's just them that are doing pre-match, post-match, coding, filming. I genuinely don't know how they do it because it's so difficult, because you've only got 24 hours in a day and you're trying to cover as much as possible. So going back to that. So I was always doing the opposition, which gave me a chance to, present and still be heavily involved. But then the managerial side, I was learning about obviously budgeting and negotiating with software companies and businesses, and people trying to reach out and trying to sell you the next product. So it was like always sort of chasing your tail from, I don't want to be left behind. You want to know what's out there, what's the latest thing. You don't want to miss out on anything, but then you need to make sure from Car's perspective, the business case is correct, and you can, you're not just buying stuff for the sake of buying it because other people have got it. I always had to create a business case of why it was going to be a benefit to the club, why it could be a benefit to us. And ultimately, you're trying to assist the manager and the coaching staff to influence training, to be able to prepare them for the game on the weekend or Wednesday, Tuesday, whenever it is. That's your job. So there's so much that actually goes into it. When I tell people about my job and stuff, they go, "Oh, you get paid to watch football," which on the grand scheme of things, that is correct. But there's so much more elements to it that it ends up, you're constantly working at night when you're home. So that's something that just comes as part of the role. Because again, Woody said something to me early in my career at Portsmouth and said, as an analyst, there's always things to do. There's always something to do. And so you're always like, okay, that's next. And you're always trying to develop yourself or trying to, find the edge basically to improve.
Definitely. I mean, it's interesting when obviously as your role developed and grown, like those things you mentioned, like making budget cases, kind of looking at the finances, managing people, like those are things you've never been taught how to do like that. You don't learn that at uni when you're looking to be an analyst here. So it's just something that you have to pick up and find your own way. So that's cool. So in terms of, you said at that point you were heading up the department and doing opposition. Was that all the way through to the end of West Ham? Were you still doing analysis at the end, or was that more of how did that look?
So it changed in terms of obviously the department grew over time. I'm very fortunate to employ some great analysts, and
in fact, how big was the department by the time that you left?
So again, my role did change the last 6 months. So I was managing the first team, women's and the academy from an analysis perspective. But I was still doing opposition for the European games. Yeah. So I was still involved, but I was trying to take the balance away from. So we had myself, we had 2 other opposition analysts, so Charlie and Bartek. And then we had Joel and Dylan for the post-match and set pieces. And then Joe joined us for the goalkeeper analysis as well. So we had a pretty big department. we had students that worked across ourselves and the sort of sports scientists. But again, it's like people say, "Oh, you had a big department," but there was always things to do.
Yeah.
No one was ever sat there twiddling their thumbs. It was like, okay, well, if you finished on that, then why don't we work together on this project, or let's have a look at defensive unit. Let's have a look at set pieces about, okay, best practice from the Premier League. Okay, let's have a look at Bundesliga. Like, there's always things to try and do to either improve yourself or improve the team. And yeah, with the European stuff as well, like I pushed myself into that. Probably, I don't know if the other analysts were happy about that or not, but I really wanted to do the European stuff because I felt, something that I didn't know an awful lot about. It took a lot of, it wasn't my usual prep time. I probably spend twice as long because I didn't know any of the players. I didn't know the league. I didn't know formations, the managers, the trends. Whereas you're watching the Premier League every weekend, you end up probably getting a good understanding. But something with the department that I tried to do, just talking about sort of build work-life balance, was a rotation system. So we had two opposition, two post-match, so that they could work together per game. So that way they'd always have sort of 10 days prep time. So they'd have a longer period of time to analyse the opponent, and also been able to analyse, from a post-match perspective, and then working together with the other post-match analysts to develop trends and stuff from that side. So I always felt that worked better because it wasn't like they were every game you constantly chasing. With the rotation system, it allowed them to not be rushing any work. So it allowed that time frame to sit and analyse and watch games properly. Not properly, that's the wrong way to say, but just gave them more time to go into the minor detail. And when you do have 3 game weeks with Europe and stuff as well, it was always tough to be able to keep churning, keep rotating, because there was at times where we'd look at the opposition with the staff on a Monday for the Thursday game, and then on a Tuesday we'd also do one for the Premier League game on a Sunday. Because we knew we were going to be flying on a Wednesday. We wouldn't be back till late on Friday, for example. So you wouldn't have the time to be able to do that. So we'd end up, trying to move things around and trying to analyse as much as possible. So that's why we ended up separating it out, and it worked for the work-life balance as well, a bit better than it can be. I suppose as an analyst, there's never any exact work-life balance because it's always changing, and so there's always things to do. But I felt that worked better, the best way, to be able to try and, as an analyst, I was always trying to give something back, and it's not always money. That I can't control the money side as much as I want to. The bonus system, and ultimately, as many of the backroom staff, you're doing a lot of travelling. Your Christmas Day training, you're in training, and your days get changed off very, very quickly. Sometimes you get the schedule the night before about how the next week's going to be, and you have to adapt and overcome those situations. So I'd always try and give back as much as I possibly could in terms of my control, to be able to help the analysts.
A few things that we're going to kind of go a little bit deeper on there. So obviously work-life balance, the European campaign, I want to speak to you about that. Just before that though, I want to ask you, I had down, you mentioned kind of Big Sam, obviously you mentioned a few managers that were first team at Pompey. I just wanted to ask in terms of, because there's been obviously other managers at West Ham as well and Ipswich, so is there any managers that you maybe particularly enjoyed working with more, or maybe some surprise you in terms of the detail that they went into? So just to name a few, McKenna at Ipswich, Moyes, Bilic, Pellegrini, I think obviously Big Sam you mentioned. So there's been quite a few, and there's quite a few different kinds of managers in there as well. So just kind of the different ones you've worked with, anyone that stuck out for any particular reason, Jamie?
So I've always had good backroom staff as well in terms of the coaches. So if you look at Slaven Bilic, who's a great guy, one of the best as an actual person to. I had a lot of health issues at the time when he joined, and he was great with me from a personal perspective. And under his coaching staff was Edin Terzic, who he was his analyst. Besiktas prior to that, Edin was doing the opposition, the post match, the training, the recruitment, and then he came to West Ham where we obviously had a team, that we'll be able to help him. So we work really, really closely with Eden, and Eden's gone on obviously to Dortmund and done great things there. And I still keep in contact with him. Pellegrini obviously was great to work with himself and his coaching staff. Obviously things he'd done at Man City, and then but part of his coaching staff was Enzo Maresca, who again has gone on to do fantastic things at Chelsea, at Leicester previously, and to be able to, you end up working probably closer to those than you do the manager because they've got so much other stuff going on. So, so I was very fortunate to work with, say, Enzo and Eden, who were probably the two that I was closer to during those periods of time. But then they were different in terms of how they worked. So sometimes it was tactical angle, sometimes it was broadcast. I want to look at sort of the detail in terms of the feet movement and 1v1 situations and the technical aspect. And then they've always come a lot, came in between sort of Slav and Pellegrini for 6 months, and then obviously had him for the final sort of five, 6 years over the European campaign. So again, I got an opportunity to work with him and coaching staff that were also fantastic to work for. So Alan Irvine and Billy McKinley are with him again at Everton, and Alan was one of the best that I'd worked with in terms of meticulous detail that he'd go into. So we worked with him closely, and he was really, really great to work with. And Billy was great as well in terms of the stuff that, the relationship that he built with us. Billy was really, really good at that sort of, merging departments together and merging the coaching staff and the analysis department. And we had Mark Warburton, who obviously you've had previously on your podcast. Again, I still speak to Warbs. So I think every manager is different, and then you have the coaching staff under that, which is different in terms of how they work. Do they speak the same language as you? How can you get your information across? Is it more a conversation like this, or do they want visual stuff because they don't quite understand how the English isn't their first language? So it gave me, from going from Big Sam to Slaven, with a team of sort of Croatian coaches, Julian Dixon, Chris Woods in there as well, as part of that, and then move into Moisey and his coaching staff, and then back to sort of a foreign coaching staff again. I gave me a real good opportunity to work and understand how different people learn. And I've always said the big thing for me is you have to adapt. So you might have the way you want to do it as an analyst, but ultimately it's up to the manager and the coaching staff how they want to direct it, because they're the ones that's presenting, they're the ones that's going in front of the camera, they're the ones who answer to the board. You're just there to support them in the best way you can. And don't get me wrong, there's been difficulties and challenges along the way. Again, how I've gone from one manager to the next in terms of the footage and the style and how they wanted to do it, and ultimately job satisfaction comes as part of that in terms of how much the manager does influence that. And then my last year I got to work with Kieran McKenna, and not only him but his coaching staff as well, which probably was a real good, again, another good learning environment for me, where he was the youngest I'd worked with in terms of a manager, but appreciated my experience and wanted my opinion. And again, it was just open discussions between us all, which I really, really enjoyed. And his coaching staff there, so Martin Pert as his sort of assistant manager, Charlie Turnbull, Lee Grant, who's just gone on to be Huddersfield manager, Rennie Gilmartin, the goalkeeping coach as well, Shawnee Aluko, that had come from playing to join the coach staff, and then Mark Hudson as well. So it was a real good mix of people, but everyone in that environment for the first time that I'd seen was an analyst. Yeah. So everyone had their laptop, everyone would code their own games, everyone would watch games, everyone had their own units, and it was very different in terms of the environment that I've been in previously, where it was sometimes a little bit more headed towards us and leaned on us, so to speak. So it was more probably collaborative approach, which I was like, okay, this is really good to understand, to learn. And it would just be, it wouldn't be I would still present to them, but you go to the manager's office and we just have a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, what are you thinking? What are you seeing? This is what I'm seeing. What do you reckon we should do here? And what do you think they'll play? Why do you think they'll play that? And yeah, again, another great opportunity for me to learn and develop. And get a real good understanding of how sort of maybe the next generation of managers and coaching staff are coming through.
Yeah, that does lead on nicely, because one question I did have down to ask you, Jamie, was how the role of the analyst changing and how you've seen it change. So I think that's definitely one thing you've said there. Like the coaching staff at Ipswich, were all pretty clued up. They all kind of did their own analysis as well. Like they had the software, they had the laptops, they could tag and code games. So I suppose it links into kind of the coach analyst role that we're seeing a lot of clubs hire for, and I suppose that can come one of two ways. So that could be a coach that knows how to use analysis and they've gone that way, or it could be an analyst that's then just kind of gone into the coaching. So yeah, just your thoughts on that coach analyst role, but also any other changes that you've seen over the 15 years you've been involved in that role in terms of how it's changed.
I mean, the role itself, from an analyst perspective, it just got more specific, I would say. So probably from back when I started, you were trying to do everything. And even we had a discussion that in the League One, League Two, that people are probably still doing that. And fair play to them. And I think the role has got more specific, so you can get more detail in that. The role itself hasn't changed. You've just got a bigger department now. I think from a head, because I was doing the head and the opposition, I think it's tough to do both of those now. I think the amount that you have to deal with as a head, dealing with the hierarchy, the pay structure, you're always looking to research the software and trying to find time to do that, the budgeting. There's actually quite a lot that ends up going into it. Probably more than people think, each head, like, just answering a few emails and managing a few people.
Yeah, especially if you're heading up like a department of 5 or 6 or 7 people. Like that's a kind of a big responsibility, and there's a lot of things to do there. I think, in terms of the change, I think for me at least, it seems like it's definitely more specific, as you mentioned. People go into a lot more detail, but then there's that kind of split between like the data, like more data side and more video and coaching side. So because, like I said, right back in the day, it was a case of one person did everything. There was obviously a few stats in the reports and stats and numbers we used, but now people are solely hired to be data scientists at the club or data analysts. So where did numbers fit in for you, Jane? Were you ever how ingrained in the stats were, and what type of analyst were you in terms of the difference between the video and the numbers, really?
So I was always brought up with video, sounds so as a child, but video was always the main aspect of it, and not taking anything away from data at all. I think it's becoming, heavily relevant and utilised, probably mainly in recruitment. You look at the stuff that Brentford have done in Brighton, for example, and the models that they've built in order to recruit players, and I think there's more value in that from a like you can see that's it's there. It's not an opinion. That is, you bought this player for this much money, you sold him for this much, you've done it through data, and therefore it works. I think with the analysis side, it's always tough because you can give numbers and you can give statistics, but it's always has to be in context. So you might be playing Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, whoever it is, but there's specific things that have happened during that game. Maybe Salah was playing, wasn't playing, you had a red card. There was 3 games in a week, that was your last game. So physically you can produce the same as you want to if there's 1 game in a week. So there's so many elements to the game where I think from actual performance analysis, it's good to benchmark, to have a good understanding. I'd always use data to back up video, and they work side by side together. I wouldn't ever just lead with data. But again, like I said, with the younger manager and the younger generation coming through, I think they have a natural understanding of data anyway, and they can work with it. So they understand, numbers, they understand on-ball value, they understand, all of that side already. So there's no convincing, I suppose, from that side. So I think the data has definitely changed, and I think it'll probably only grow with AI as well. To be honest, if that will be a separate department, probably, and then I think that will then work. I might be wrong, but with the analysis, I think it'll stay video, but within a department that can link in with the analysis department, recruitment department, but then it will go into marketing, commercial, ticketing. Do you know what I mean? That one that as data you can use, collectively across. So I think it's only going to get bigger, and I would love to see it within clubs as well. in terms of in the analysis department, and I would love to see how it could work. And it's not something that I had the luxury of at West Ham or Ipswich, but teams that do are very, very, very fortunate, and it can definitely influence the way that you're thinking or you're seeing things sometimes. Whereas I'd always try and use it as after I watch the video and got an understanding, I then look at the statistics and then go, okay, no, I am seeing the same things as what the stats are saying.
Yeah.
I didn't ever want it to influence me and go, oh, I'm going to look for this now before I watch the game. I'd always try and do it from eye to start with.
Yeah. Okay, so if you've made it this far into the video, you must be enjoying the content. Either that or you have simply fallen asleep. So whichever one of them is, you probably won't mind me asking you for a quick favour. So as you know, I'm always looking to grow the channel. So the bigger the channel gets, the more people we can reach and impact, but also the bigger and better guests we can invite onto the channel to have these types of chats. So with that in mind, if you haven't already done so, I would very much appreciate it if you did hit the subscribe button down below the video. The stats are showing around 25% of viewers are subscribed. So there's a big chunk of you that are watching the videos, but you haven't yet hit the subscribe button, but I will let you off because you can do it right now. It's free and it literally takes 1 second. So if you go down, click the subscribe button, it would mean a lot to the channel and help the channel to grow. So that's all for now. Let's get back to the video. Yeah. Interesting. So a couple of the next questions I want to ask Jamie, just to kind of get the perspective of the analyst. So I kind of asked this to a few other guests, but it's always interesting to hear from different people. So in terms of match day in the Premier League as a first team analyst, so we'll go either, well, probably maybe West Ham, I suppose.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I really want to know, and let's just go with a normal Saturday 3 o'clock game. I know there's not many of them these days.
Yeah.
So in terms of when you get in there, like meetings before, who you're working with, any presentations, setting up, basically as much detail as you can on the actual match day in the Prem.
Yeah. So again, changed massively. I'll sort of talk generically to start with that. In the Premier League, you're again so fortunate that you have a dedicated area, home and away. You have a dedicated area that's yours, and you have feeds up to that point that give you, as many angles as you want. So it is very luxurious. I'm not going to lie, compared to taking a feed out of the back of a TV in the interview room and being told to get out when bringing the man the match in after the game. So yeah, it's definitely changed. I'm very, very fortunate on that side. You also can have a feed in the dressing room as well directly. So I think we'd always, again, try and split it up in terms of who's going to be at the hotel, who's going to be at the stadium setting up. But in terms of setup now would be, so for home games, if it's 3 o'clock kickoff, we'd probably get there for around, I would say 10 o'clock maybe, between sort of 9:30 and 10. And then we set up the presentation room. Like, I couldn't tell you how many presentations I've set up in the years I've been there, but it's silly things like, okay, if the projector screen's quite low, putting a table underneath it to make it higher to make sure everyone's like being able to see it, so they're not looking over people's heads. The seats are up so that people are just walking in and sitting down and not having to go through 5, 6, 7, 8 people, splitting up. So we've got rows of 4s and having an area for the analyst to sit in position so he can himself, but the manager needs to be able to see. And there's so many little things like from that perspective that I suppose you just gain over time and you understand. So that would probably be the first thing we'd set up, is always a presentation room, because there's always going to be a meeting that day. Usually it would be set pieces. So that's probably a bit of a norm, I would say, in clubs, is that the set piece would be sort of towards once the team had definitely been picked, and you try and get as much information on the opposition as possible. You might hear things in newspaper articles, Twitter, whatever it is. You do as much research as you can, and then so we'd have that ready. We put the set pieces on the wall. We'd also have them on a TV as well in the change rooms on loop, so that the set piece is such a massive part of the game now. We'd need to be able to cover as much as possible. So again, some people are different learners. Some people want to see it all on the wall and they can pick their name out, their number on every single one. Whereas other people might want to be putting their shin pads on, socks getting changed, and they're just looking at it on rotation. So we always try to offer both, because again, players we had, English wasn't always the first language. So we try and offer different ways of learning and understanding for them. We'd have Hawkeye and stuff on the bench. So then you have to set up the iPads and make sure the feeds have been worked down in the dugout. You then go up to the analyst position, check all the feeds, make sure they work. We have a camera set up as well, record the warm up. So this was sort of multiple reasons really. You'd look at any injuries. So if there's anything that happened during it, you had video of it. But you'd also just look at sort of tempo, how did it differ from previous? How did we start the game then from that? So yeah, we'd always try and record the warm up, and then you'd have the set piece presentation, and then you'd have the lineup come out sort of an hour and 15 before, which was always, that's a decisive thing, right? You planned all week for what you think is going to be, and then that comes out and they change formation, or the main person you're looking at is now injured. So I always enjoyed that pressure of when it come out. Okay, right, having to, because ultimately the manager stuff want to know, okay, what they're playing, and it's all digital now in the Premier League, so you just get it in number order.
Yeah.
So you'd have to quickly work out of, right, okay, that him, and try and put it into a formation in your head straight away.
Yeah.
To be able to feed that back to the manager, and then you might be doing some research from there in terms of, okay, well, these two have both played on the right before. When did they play together? Who's playing left? Who's playing right? Little things that they're going to have an influence. And then we feed that back to the team. So we'd have magnets of every player, and then that would get put onto sort of a flip chart, presented to the lads, and then we then present our individual. So we had an analyst office at West Ham where we'd have individual clips on every player that they were going to face, and then we'd then either sit down with them and present. So some players that we built good relationships wanted our opinions, so we'd sit and chat to them for sort of, it's 2-3 minutes, it's not long, and be able to give our opinion without obviously turning around and saying this is exactly what's going to happen. We give our opinion on what we think and what we researched, and then probably when the lads go out to warm up, and that's probably be quiet before the storm, I used to always call it. Like, okay, everything's done, players are out there now. I'd always try and watch the warm up if I could. I'd always try and watch the opposition just to see if there's any way they're setting up slightly differently. Is there anything going on that we haven't thought of? Are there any injuries that are occurring? Any niggles? And then so you wait for them to come back in, make sure everything was okay, and then we'd head upstairs to the analyst position, and then we'd always have a coach that would sit in between us. There's usually two of us, and then we'd just be in constant collaboration with the coach, feeding back down to the manager and to the assistant manager, again about things we're seeing, things they're seeing, if anything differed from what we said before, and areas of space that we want to exploit maybe, or things that we need to change maybe to stop the opposition or slow them down. And then similar aspects we feedback at half time. It probably became a little bit more individual or units rather than big team stuff, because there's so much going on, more than it ever used to be. I don't know why, whether 15 minutes doesn't seem long enough for half time now. By the time the lads get in, they've started taking some of their strappings off, and the manager spoke to them. You've probably got 4 minutes, maybe 3-4 minutes before you then got to run back upstairs and try and get the feedback again. So ended up being probably more us working directly with coaches, and then 2 or 3 players, and we gather around us. We had a screen in our analyst room, rather than big team stuff, unless something majorly needed to change. It was more about little minor details that we felt that we could change, set pieces as well. And then once that game's finished, then it's straight on to analysing the game back, putting it onto the coaches' laptops, and then moving on to the next game. So there's constant cycle that never ever really stops. So as an analyst, there's always more you can do.
Yeah, definitely. So next one then, in terms of kind of your perspective, would be on the pre-match. So you've obviously done that for many years, pre-match and opposition scouting. So I just want to, hypothetical, let's say you're playing my team, you're playing Sunderland next. It's not the start of the season, so you can go back and watch the last however many games. So what's your plan of action there, Jamie? How many games do you like to watch, and maybe some things that you think beginners maybe miss out on, or mistakes they make, just from your perspective?
I would say it depends on how the club wants, or how the manager and the coach want to work. So you go down 2 avenues. You go down, what have they been doing? And it doesn't matter about what you're playing or what they're playing. What have they been doing? Or you go, this is the way we're playing. What have they done against that formation and that shape? Because it really does differ. Like if you're going towards how they play against a team like us, then you can go into real minute detail. And look, you could be wrong. You can be wrong in terms of that, because the game might not have gone well, or they didn't after the game they didn't like certain things that happened, and they're going to change it.
Yeah.
But then I would say you probably end up having to watch more games by just watching, okay, what have they been doing and what do we think they're going to do as a collective. So I would say it's definitely dictated by which way, as a club, manager, coach, staff, and us, I mean, you analyse.
Yeah.
And I would say I'd always try and watch 5 to 7, which sounds probably quite a lot.
Yeah.
But I was always a bit obsessive, so to speak. So I'd always feel like I was missing something. I don't know. I didn't ever see it as a bad habit. I just felt, okay, well, if I watch another game, then I'm either confirming what I already know, or I'm now adding things that I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there's always more you can do. There's always more you can watch. So, 5 usually, I think, is the normal-ish number, I would say, in the Premier League. Obviously, it's always time dependent on what you can do and the level of detail you go to, and obviously a lot of it can be automated now through, Match Tracker and whatever other software you might have access to. I don't think there's mistakes people can make, but I think there needs to be probably more research done into influence of personnel, because it is really, the Premier League level, it's really dependent on who's playing in what position, because the influence and the strengths of that player are very different to the next one that's in that position, because ultimately that striker is probably worth between, I don't know, 35 to 65 million.
Yeah.
And that's their main striker. And then he's injured, and they've got another one that's coming in that's probably between 20 and 35 million maybe. But their attributes are going to be very different from each other. So you then start to have to think about, okay, well, let's have a look at the games when he's played before. What does he offer? How does it differ to if they play with one centre forward that always runs in behind? Now it's a bigger target man that wants to drop and come to feet and link. How does that then affect the wingers? Do they then run in behind more? So I think personnel does have a big impact. It is obviously very tactical now. It is, like a game of chess, I suppose, throughout the game. So it changes throughout the game as well. So I think, I don't think people make mistakes. I just think that probably more research does need to be done on how an individual influences that shape or formation or the way they play. If you take Salah out of Liverpool and put somebody else there, is their pressing structure going to be different? Salah presses as a front two from goal kicks, which forces the right back out or forces Gravenberch across. Well, if it's going to be somebody else that plays there, is he going to do a normal sort of right winger pressing the fullback position? If so, who then joins us? The centre forward. Do they press in the front two? For example, it's just a small example, but that's the influence that he has from a pressing structure. Okay, what about in possession then? From a defensive third, mid third, attacking third. It is really influenced by personnel. I think you have a general structure and general formation. I remember Arteta saying in an interview once, or a press conference, that they played 100 and whatever formations it was in that game. Do you know what I mean? So you can say that they're going to do this in this formation, but ultimately there's all the element of surprise and the influence that individuals can have on the game. But I think, I'd like to think most analysts have always coded through the phases. So, goal kick, mid block, attacking phase, and the same way around. And it's just how you present from there and how you get your message across, which I think probably makes good analysts great analysts. Is how do you get that information across? Because that's your job to watch. Say you're watching 5 games, I then have an organizer or a sort of file that's 2.5 hours long. And I need to get that to a 10 to 12 minute video package that I can present, or maybe the assistant manager comes in, can you show me a little bit on their defensive stuff in the final third? And I've got to show him 3 or 4 clips. That's all he's got time for. And I need to get my message across. So it's like, how can you do that? And as an analyst, I think you learn over time that how to not influence, how to be able to communicate properly with coaches and manager. The manager has even less time than the coaches. because he has so much other stuff going on that your conversations are so short with him that you need to make sure you can communicate effectively and be able to get your message across, whether that's from a visual perspective or from just pure verbal communication.
Definitely. So after kind of, what was it, 12, 13 years at West Ham, you obviously made the move to Ipswich. So just want to ask, why that move? Was it a move where you fancied a change? Was the changes at the club which kind of made that happen? And kind of, because to be at a club for that long, to move to a new, that's kind of all you've known. I know you mentioned right at the start, but in terms of that level, like, it must have been a big change for you to go into a new team with everything different, basically.
So the Lopetegui come in, and as part of that, he brought his own staff in. So obviously, I left West Ham and sort of exploring other options, opportunities that come along, and there was, an opportunity to work with Ipswich, and had a meeting with Kieran McKenna and Will Stevenson, who was head of analysis and moved over to the recruitment side, and it was just a different conversation. It was a real fresh, asking about family situation and what I want to get out of it, and the influence that he wants to have, the manager wants to have, and the people he has in and around him as a backroom staff. And I felt like it was a great opportunity for me I could say where I was living as well. It wasn't a million miles away, so I had the opportunity to stay where I was, which was really quite pivotal for me, with the kids and my wife and the family situation. So I didn't feel nervous. I don't know why. I probably it just felt like the right move to do, and they had a sort of youngish team for the analysis department, and I felt like my experience I could use to be able to help them develop and help and understanding, and obviously moving into the Premier League, and hopefully use my knowledge to be able to help as much as possible. Obviously it wasn't enough to be able to stay in the Premier League, but to be able to be in that culture. Speak about culture quite a lot in other things, but the culture at Ipswich was really, really something that I hadn't experienced for a long time. It was a real sort of breath of fresh air, where there was a lot of independence on the players, but it was like we're all in this together, work ethic. It's just, I don't know, you can't, unless you're in it, you can't explain the culture it is there that Kieran McKenna's built. Not only him, but obviously Mark Ashton and that as well, as a whole club, to be able to do what they did from League One to the Premier League so quickly, after joining and meeting people for a couple of weeks. You could understand why they did what they did. So it was, unfortunately, it wasn't enough last season to be able to stay in the Premier League.
Yeah, I suppose the nature in which you left West Ham, I think people outside of football may find that surprising, but that's kind of just shows how the industry is in terms of a new manager comes in. If they have their own people, there's not really a role for you, and that's, you definitely won't be the last person that'll happen to. No. Many people that hasn't. It's a tricky one because you obviously, especially if it happens during a season as well, where no one's really hiring for a new analyst kind of thing. So you're out there and you feel like, how do I get back in? So, but obviously you've got tons of experience, so you didn't luckily, you found a great position at Ipswich there. So you did mention earlier in the conversation a little bit around the European campaign. I wanted to ask you about kind of some highs from your career. I'm sure that's an obvious one in terms of West Ham winning the Conference League. So any others spring to mind? And also, if you can just talk us around the final of the conference, how was that experience as a whole, Jamie?
Yeah, no, I'll talk about the European side to start with. So, obviously, we had the Europa League the year before, and we'd done I don't know, maybe we were a surprise package. It was new for everybody, so the adrenaline and every game, London Stadium, I remember against Seville, was crazy atmosphere. One of the best, to be fair. And going away to European countries, and again, people think it's a glamorous life, but they're like, how was it? And I was like, I got on a plane, got on a coach, got to the hotel, coach of the game, coach back, airport, go. So you don't really see a lot of the city, but you get to, you're very fortunate to get to experience, the stadiums, and get to develop an understanding of how other teams play in different countries. So So yeah, we got to semi-finals. We lost to Frankfurt, and we're absolutely gutted. But then to bounce back from that and then compete again in the Europa Conference League and the way we did it as well, it was, I don't know, something special about it. And yeah, the Prague was, we were there for a few days. So we were probably there for maybe three days in total. So a little bit earlier than the other European matches. But I don't know, it was just a great buzz around the place. Like I probably went to more level of detail into every individual, and anything I could get any about where they grew up, what language they spoke, everything. We just try and do as much detail as we could to try and get that across. And we tried different things like Charlie put a motivational together, which was fantastic. We have family messages as well, which really hit home sort of how hard the boys have worked to be able to get there. And then, yeah, when it got to, I don't really remember much about the game. Not because I drank a lot after, but I only really remember towards maybe when the handball was given for the penalty, and then like from then onwards, really, because there wasn't a lot in the game. It wasn't a great game. Doesn't matter now if you haven't watched it. They don't need to West Ham won it. So, and it was like, okay, right, we're probably preparing for extra time now, and then obviously Jared goes in and scores, and you just sort of half lost my mind at that point. And I suppose as an analyst, you get to celebrate with your other analysts and the coach and stuff there, and then everyone's downstairs celebrating on the pitch and stuff like that. And you get to do that after, which was lovely. And I was fortunate. My dad was there, my wife, and my little boy as well. So they got to celebrate with us. So it was a crazy few days, unbelievable experience, and go back home and do the parade straight away. The parade was, I couldn't believe how many fans were there that turned up, considering how many were in Prague. So then go and do the parade, and then it's off season.
Yeah.
But this was like sort of June the 9th, maybe June the 10th. So we only had sort of 3 weeks, and then we were back in anyway. So yeah, it was just like a bit of a calm down straight away from going from that high for 3-4 days, and then then obviously it's a chance to recharge and go again. It was a crazy time, amazing time, and I think maybe in 10-15 years, I look back, it'll be hopefully West Ham will move on to win more European trophies, or even a Premier League potentially, FA Cup run. Fingers crossed, because there's a lot of good people that still work there. And in terms of lows, I don't know. I've never really seen them anything as low as there's been low results, but ultimately there's always the next game.
Yeah.
Obviously low this year in terms of the relegation, but I don't know. The culture didn't make it seem like a relegation. Like it wasn't a down environment at all. It was like, okay, we're learning every week. And I learned so much from Kieran and his team about how to speak to people, how to be able to communicate effectively, and in terms of a defeat, how do you then react to that and build again, and get the team up to for the next game. And lows. There's lows in terms of things that have happened, or goals that go in last minute. But for me, I'd always try and be as level as I could. So not too high when I win, not too low when we lose. Just try and keep a happy medium, because I think as an analyst as well, is that it's such an emotional game. And when you're down on the pitch and the sideline, the referee and everything you're getting heavily involved in, we were always away from it. And I quite like that, because it just gave you you got the perspective of everything. You weren't too heavily influenced. So sometimes, players would come in, that was definitely a penalty. I'm like, no, it wasn't. Like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'm just taking my point of view, is I don't believe it was. And I'd always try and do that after the game as well, is that I don't want to be like, so low. And it is hard, because and my wife would say that I did take it home with me quite a lot. But you have to try and not take it home with you too much, because there is more to life in football. Your family is, for me anyways, is so important, and especially when you have children, how that does change, and you don't want to be moping around for 2-3 days or for 24 hours when that's the only time you've got with your children and your partner. So I always try and be as level as I could, given how the game went. But ultimately, you are doing all the work to try and win on the weekend or win that game. So it does obviously have an impact on you. But yeah, I always try and stay as level-headed as you can and not let it influence you too much.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the European win must have been so good, especially like you said, your family was there as well to celebrate, and it kind of makes all the really long weeks and late nights worthwhile when you can celebrate. You don't get that in any other job, do you? When you can have that amount of elation going to work. So it's really, really kind of mind blowing, really. So what I wanted to ask you about next is kind of work-life balance. We have hinted on it a little bit, so I'm going to link a couple of other interviews that I've had on the podcast so far down below. So two that come to mind in terms of analysts are, so Tom Corden was at Forest, he's moved away, now lecturer, and Craig, who was at Norwich, and he's now in the kind of software data world. So you've also stepped away, which we're going to talk about your new venture as well. But did work-life balance play a part in that decision to go and do your own venture, and how do you feel about the whole conversation of work-life balance as an analyst?
Yeah, look, it's difficult. It is so difficult because, say, we've already discussed on. There's always more to do. There's always a next game coming up. There's always things to do. So I think even when you have a day off, I think you'll be hard pushed if an analyst doesn't open his laptop up or his or her laptop up on a day off.
Yeah.
I really do. It's just a habit, and it's just if I do something now, do you know what I mean? I can just do something. I can just do something. I can just do something. So I don't think you can get a work-life balance that suits an analyst. I just don't think that's what I tried at West Ham to be able to rotate. Had to be, given the okay by the manager, because ultimately they might just want to work with certain people and every game. Yeah. So that was tough, and but then some analysts I want to go to every game. I want to go and experience it. I want to. Do you know what I mean? So you had sort of the battle between the two there. For me personally, at Ipswich, I was doing the opposition side and managing the team, but I wasn't doing match days. So that gave me a chance to be able to have a bit more work-life balance and be able to see the kids and spend a bit more time with them on weekends. But then I'd end up always watching the game at a weekend, and then whoever we were going to play, I'd always watch their game as well, and then always put the presentation together so it was ready on a Monday morning. So I wasn't at a game, at the match day game. I'd end up spending most of the weekends looking back at our game, looking at the opposition, doing the opposition analysis, putting together a presentation ready for Monday. So I think it's tough. For me, with West Ham coming to an end, my thought was, I'm getting older now. What is my actual next step? Because do I want to be away from the kids and from my wife when I'm, 45, 40, 50? The answer to that personally is no. I don't want to be. So I wanted to develop something that I could build, and you may agree, people may or may not agree. I don't know what the natural next step is for analysis if you don't want to go into recruitment. Yeah. There's no, okay, well, I was, very fortunate to be head at 25. What's my next step from there? There is no natural one unless you want to go down sport director, technical director role.
That is quite interesting. You meant that the age does definitely play a part, because you kind of almost fast tracked. People might not be the head of a Premier League department until they are your age now, but you've already got 10 years of that or whatever. So and like you said, your priorities change, doesn't it? Like when you are 21, you haven't got a family. No. It's all that matters is the game, and then you might then take that home with you. But you get a family, you get children and stuff. Like there's obviously more to life than just football, and you start to realise that your priorities change. So but the age thing is definitely you've almost fast tracked the career pretty much. Yeah. I agree in terms of the next step is when you see analysts, the analysts that were analysts when I were analysts, they have pretty much all gone recruitment if they're still in football. And if that's not your thing and you don't want to do that, then like I say, there's a sporting director and people and the two others I mentioned a second ago, they've just stepped out of the club setting. So it is a difficult one in terms of what's next for an analyst. I would agree with that.
It's not really sustainable either, with the schedule becoming.
Oh, it's mad.
So, it is mad, and it's not just that. Is that your schedule then for the week changes depending on when the game is. So, it might be your little boy's birthday on a Sunday,
Mm.
but your game's now been moved to the Monday. Well,
Mm.
you're in Sunday, and you can't book days off, you can't book time off, and even how many years I've been in it, people are like, oh, you want to come? Do you want to do that? We're getting married then.
Yeah.
Oh, can you not book the day off? No,
No, we got
I'll
longer,
see.
don't
I'll see
you?
you. I'll see you in June. That's you. That's just that, and I don't. It wasn't sustainable for me to do that for
Mm.
beyond sort of where I am now.
Yeah.
So we'll jump on to sort of the business side that I'm
Mm.
doing now, because it probably links in quite nicely. That what I want to build is the business where it is a natural next step for analysts.
Mm.
The business is called the Football Analyst, so really original name.
Yeah.
And as part of it is sort of different areas, different branches, I suppose, that we offer. So individual analysis for players. So that might be opposition players, post-match analysis, maybe even their training analysis. If obviously the agreement with the club that you can view that. That can be directly with players. That can be with agencies. Can even be directly with clubs. Because again, as an analyst, you're always chasing, trying to do more within the club setting. Whereas I feel like having a separate business or a separate consultant that can work directly with the player, I think you'll get more level of detail. Just from a pure time perspective,
Yeah.
the analysts at the club really, they want to offer it. I'm not sure they can. Also looking at offering sort of a analysis department overview. So going into clubs, looking at the analysis department, how it's structured, how it works, prioritizing sort of workflow, but also looking at the softwares they're using to try and help from a budgeting perspective. So we'd go into clubs and sort of spend however long they wanted to, whether that's 1 day a week, 2 weeks to 4 weeks, and sit down with the analysts, look at their workflow, how they work, also how they communicate, how they get the message across, have a look at their software, and try and work with them to be able to prioritize. Because I always found, like, as an analyst, you probably end up doing too much or of one thing when you probably should be prioritizing your workflow and doing something slightly different. So I say, as part of the business, we offer that, as we'll come in and we'll evaluate and sort of giving you an understanding and a report of how we believe you can improve efficiency. And we also offer sort of recruitment support as well. So we will look at, if you want sort of myself on an interview panel, or if you you're looking for a specific task or something you want the analyst to do to try and get the best out of them, then we can offer sort of recruitment support as well. But what I want to get to as well is that there's always that period of time between you lose an analyst and you're an employed analyst. There's always, probably, depending on how quick you are in terms of your recruitment process and the notice periods and stuff, there's always maybe 6 weeks to I would say 3 months sometimes, where you don't have an analyst. So you're working double as hard. So I want to get to a point where the business is employing analysts that we can offer
that's interesting.
an analyst there for a period of time, to just shorten the gap and shorten the workload, to be able to offer that as help to clubs and stuff. But with trusted analysts that have been in the game a long time. There's a multitude of different sort of areas that we believe we can offer, and I want to build a business to be able to employ experienced analysts so that they can work closely with clubs, with players, with agencies, with organisations, in order to be able to improve and succeed.
Yeah, it sounds good, and I honestly wish you the best of luck, Jamie. It sounds really, really exciting. I'll link the website down below under the video so people can check that out and kind of reach out to you. So what I kind of like to end it on, we've been going nearly an hour now, so I don't want to keep you too much longer.
That's right. No problem.
So in terms of a little bit of advice, you said it there in terms of like recruitment process, whether they want you to sit on an interview panel to hire a new analyst. So over the time of you working at West Ham, you, I presume, would have been part of that hiring process for different analysts. And many people that are watching this video and other videos on the channel will be looking to get their next job or their first job even. So can you talk us a little bit around what it looked like for hiring an analyst at West Ham? Like you mentioned a task there. So would that typically be what would you do, like the first interview, second, how would that look?
Yeah. So in terms of the structure that we use is, I try and give as much detail in the job description as possible. Obviously, don't get me wrong, it does adapt once you end up coming into the environment. But I try and give as much detail as possible because I didn't want people to be misled in terms of what they were getting into. Sometimes we'd have actually a broad job description because we also didn't want to miss out on if there was someone that was unbelievably experienced in opposition, but we were advertised for a post match.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There was so we sometimes we keep it broad because we can move analysts in and around, and some people wanted to freshen up their knowledge and move into the post match side, wherever it was. So we'd always try and whittle it down. From HR send you through the CVs. I'd always probably try and look at the CVs myself as well. Again, it takes a long time. There might be 150, 250 applicants, but for me, if I'm spending hours with these people in the environment and I can't spend half an hour or 15 minutes looking at every CV, then I don't think I'm doing my job personally. I need to know the ins and outs of this person, how they work, because I see them more than I do my family. So I need to understand this person as much as possible. So my whittling down process was probably quite strict, but I also knew felt like I knew what I needed for that environment as well. In terms of the personalities that were already in the department, but also how they work closely with the coaching staff and the manager. So we whittle that down.
Sorry, Jim, before you go on, I just want to drill on that CV point. So you mentioned you would typically look through them all as well. So solely on the CV point of view, then, how important is a good CV, and what are you? Is there any conversation you see or things that you would dismiss a CV for, like, just on that kind of filtering process first of all?
Yeah. So obviously most of them are like CVs and covering letter. It's just attention to detail, right? It sounds stupid, like it sounds so easy to say, but I promise you the amount of covering letters or CVs I've had, not CVs, but covering letters I've had with the previous job they've applied for.
I know.
And I'm just like, again, if you can't take the time to be able to look at that, change it, and apply for a job that could be worth X amount of money for you, that could start your career or develop your career, then I'm not sure how I can employ you, because that attention to detail is everything as an analyst. You need to have that complete, like, in every day basically. So just attention to detail. And I've always advised that if the job description says certain things we're looking for, relate to them in your covering letter or your CV where possible, because that's what we're looking for. This is what we're looking for. Tell me about the certain aspects of how you've met a deadline, or how you've dealt with a difficult conversation, or how you've communicated effectively with a member of hierarchy, for example. Like, that's the stuff that I want to know, that, okay, well, they've dealt in those situations before, so they'll be okay in this environment. Because a lot of the CVs we will have, there'll be similar experiences in terms of like however many years at a club, but I want to know really, what have you actually been doing? Because the CV can tell you, okay, I was head of analysis, but actually when you get down to it, it was head of academy analysis for X amount of time. Or, some people that might have been doing stuff with the first team just as a volunteer won't put it on there. And I'm like, what? Like, that's really, really if you're going for a first team role, and talk about how you had an influence in, you had a 6-month interim period and with the first team because somebody left, somebody moved on, and this is the things you learned as part of that, because academy environment and the first team environment are very, very different. The first team environment's not all about, mostly about winning and being successful, and the academy is about development, trying to get players into the first team. So they are different environments. Making sure your CV is clear, structured, and relatable to the job description, I would say would give you the best chance to get through to the next stage. That next stage would then be a task. So usually it would be, depending on what the role is, if it's an opposition role, we'd probably send a video, maybe a couple of games of the opposition, and it'll be analyse opposition, feedback to us, always with audio, and for 8 minutes, 8-minute video maybe, something like that. Because again, can they keep time restrictions? Do they need any more? Sometimes that's all the information you'll get from manager. Analyse this for me and give it back to me. So you got to think on your own 2 feet. So I wouldn't give loads of information. I'd always give enough for them to be able to make up their own mind, and then I was happy to see how people would then run with it from there. I liked it, and I'd always include audio because I want to hear how people spoke and communicated, because they need to be able to do that in the environment. They need to be able to communicate with me, with the other coaching staff, with the manager, with the players. So I'd always say, right, and it's difficult because you're recording yourself speaking to nobody, and you've got a time frame to try and fit it all in as well. So it's a difficult situation, and I knew it was, and I'd always, again, maybe strictly, but give a tight deadline. Like I like to always give sort of 5 to 7 days, but ultimately I know that Analyst is probably working in the club, and they've got enough stuff going on as it is. But this is part and parcel of the role, is that you've got to be able to move things around and adapt to be able to complete the deadline. And yeah, so then that was the next task, and then from there we whittled it down to maybe 8, and then we'd have sort of a Zoom call like this. So myself and Charlie Radmore is head of analysis now at West Ham, would be on that call. And then again, something that I do was we'd have separate sheets, and we'd have sort of like a matrix score. So it'd be like fit for the role, fit for the department, fit for the manager, personality, analytical skills. So we sort of 5-6 different things, and then we give a score out of 10 on everyone after the interview. We wouldn't speak to each other. We just do our scores. We write a few notes down on what we think, because what I didn't want to happen was that just because I'm in charge, I turn around and say I really liked him, and Chaz has got the scores there and go, no, I liked him as well. Do you know what I mean? Just because I said it. So I was like, no, right, we're doing separate scores, and you'd end up having a good discussion about each thing then. Right, okay, what do you think here with the personality? I think the personality is really, really good. But how would they deal with the manager and the coaching staff? Or what influence would they have with the players? Would they be able to adapt, and how they'd be under pressure? And, you'd be able to speak about so many different things by doing that, rather than just I liked him, or her, it's good, they'll be all right. Like I wanted to go into as much, again, because we're going to spend so much time with this person. How much detail can we get? Can we understand in a Zoom call or a Teams, and make sure that we're communicating correctly to be able to, get the key information across to each other that they are the right person for that environment.
That's a few interesting things. So you mentioned that maybe 8 or so get on the Zoom, and I know it will come down to the quality of the task, but how many would you like? What percentage of CVs get to the task stage? Let's say, because I'm presuming you're going to get hundreds of people applying for.
But I suppose I say that's why I'm probably advised to relate it as much towards a job description as possible, because I will whittle it down based on the experience they've got and what they've said in their CV, and how relatable that is to the job we're looking for in hand. So I would say the task probably around about 20, maybe 15 to 20. But then I've got to take into account that the more I do, the more then I have to, if I have to spend 20 of 8 to 10 minute tasks, ends up being pretty much a full day that I need to then account for somewhere along the line. So you might get 150 to 200 applicants. I would say easily 60, 70% are just trying to get a job in football, without the relevant experience. So, you then get your sort of maybe 30 to 40% are the ones you actually really want to look at. And then you get down to the nitty gritty of the CVs and stuff like that. And me personally, I'm very fortunate to have a good network. So I won't reach out to their line manager directly, but I might reach out to people that they've worked with previously and try to get a good understanding of them as a person, how they were in the environment. Because that is a massive, massive thing that you can't get across on the CV is, okay, how are they going to be in a football environment? It's not an easy environment to be involved in. As an analyst, you're probably never really in the green. You're always sort of teetering on the red, because if you've done your job properly, you're there. If you haven't, you're down there. You're never up.
That the thing you said about kind of the matrix of scores and like the fit between the department, I think like that's definitely important for people to realize, like, because like I said, the people that get chosen to do the task and the interview, they're all on paper for their analysis, they're probably good enough to do that
Yeah.
stage. They're probably fine, and they could do the job. But like you said, the amount of time you're spending with these, like you're sharing a coach, you're sometimes sharing a room with them, you're flying with them, you work 60, 70 hours a week or whatever. It is a hell of a lot comes down to your personality, how you're going to fit, and how you cope in different situations. So that's just something I wanted to add there. So one final thing on kind of the employment stuff. How important are like portfolios to you, Jamie? And because a lot said, create your portfolio, link it on your CV. I understand you've got the task, like you're setting them a task, you can see some work there.
Yeah.
Do you take much consideration into if someone's linked some previous work or not?
Yeah, no, I'd always try and I'd always take time to go and look at it, because ultimately they're displaying how they are analysing, or the way they're communicating, or the things they're seeing. So I always, if they've got it, fantastic. I'll take a look, and I'll try and get an understanding. Sometimes I'll ask questions related to that in their interview, to see if they remember what they were actually speaking about, or how they're presenting, or there might be things where I go, okay, I really like what they've done there, or I feel like they could probably improve that. So then I'll sort of test them in the interview stage. I think it's probably becoming bigger, obviously, with the social media side, that people want to do and want to display it. It's just then, okay, well, how can you be different from the rest? How do you stand out? And then, can you maintain that when you're inside a club? That's probably the bit where I'm like, I don't know if you can, because you don't have a lot of the time to do it. So, can you maintain your portfolio on the outside? Stuff you're doing on social media. Clubs probably get a little bit funny on that as well. They don't really want you to, because it's weird. The analysis side is such a private world in your own club, but then the analysts are so like open to talk to each other, but without obviously giving anything specific away about what you're actually doing. So I'm not against it at all. I think it just gives you an added value and an added understanding of what that person's like.
Yeah, perfect. So one final thing I always ask everyone that comes on, Jamie, pretty much is, do you have any recommendations for any books, podcasts? It doesn't have to be sports analysis. It can literally be anything, mate. If there's anything that takes your fancy.
I'm not a massive reader. I prefer to switch off. Like if I'm reading something, because the last one was Harlan Coben. I Will Find You, book on holiday. But the one that stuck out for me, I read it years ago, it's called Think Like a Freak, by Stephen Levitt. They wrote Freakonomics as well. So it's basically about, again, I read it probably just before I got the job as head, and it's just about thinking differently, thinking outside the box, and approaching things maybe in a bit of a different way, and probably understanding more the small problems rather than trying to approach the big problem straight away. It's just about thinking differently, thinking outside the box, and that's probably one that's always stuck with me from I read it then, and how can I think slightly differently to try and solve problems? Because that's all you're trying to do is just solve problems all the time. Whether you're opposition, post match, head, you're just trying to solve problems all the time. So that one I'll probably recommend. And then podcast wise,
other than this one, of course, Jamie.
Other than yourself, obviously. I used to listen to Direct CEO, obviously High Performance, which I think most people probably listen to this would do. I would always listen to Perrin in Hell with Rob Beckett and Josh Whittaker. I was up and down the A12 most days, so that just gave me a little bit more of a switch off into my family life as well. It gave me a mix of both. So, but I'm more music, to be fair. I prefer just to listen to music and the radio, and just I don't know, just zone into whatever work I'm doing, rather than the only books I'm reading at the moment are probably kids books at night with the two kids. So it's slightly different.
Yeah, nice, perfect. Well, I'll link that book down below for anyone that checks out. I'll link to your website down below. You're also on LinkedIn. People can find you on there. But again, just want to say thanks for your time. Obviously, we've been going.
No problem at all.
Really appreciate your time, Jamie. Thanks for sharing your insight, your journey into what you've kind of been up to over the last 15 years in elite sports. It's been really interesting to hear. So other than that, I wish you all the best with the
Cheers, Chris. Thank you.
And hopefully catch up with you soon.
Amazing. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Appreciate that. Cheers, Chris. Take care.